I'm mostly going to start with a little layer of pink, and that pink is a little, well, it doesn't have it on here, it's that magenta, Q something magenta, it's a very long name, and as I don't have it in front of me, they've abbreviated it on this little square, so we'll call it Q magenta, and it looks like that little one right there, and you can see that in zoom. So this is my palette. I left New Zealand, I left Hong Kong in January, thinking I was going down to New Zealand for 6 weeks and coming back to Hong Kong. So I quickly put some paints in my palette and I sort of just make a little chart. So that's all I've been left with for most of the year until just a couple of weeks ago, when I got a few more sent to me. So we're having this one down the bottom, which is lovely bright sort of pink. It's not the brightest. You can get opera, which is quite bright, but I don't think we need to go quite that bright for this flower, to be sure. So once I've put on my pencil, it really depends how much of that I leave as to how much, how dark the colour's going to be at the end. For instance, here there's a line that I've drawn. There's some cryptic lines, perhaps, that we could talk about that in the actual drawing itself. I'm not sure if I've got it here. Let's see. I do. I'm perfect. Some of the more cryptic lines, and you've been stuck with them as well if you've drawn from this one. That line there, sort of, if you had a look at your photo, would show obviously where the pink just drifts out into the white area, and there's a little bit of a white area down here as well, not necessarily as thick as this, but I do sometimes make that a little bit bigger because I know that I'll just bring the colour in and make it as fine as I need it to be. This little wiggle down here, probably when I was looking at the let's see what I was thinking when I was looking at that. Look at the main picture. Oh, there looks like there's just some sort of, it's just some sort of the colour, the paleness sort of comes in a little bit further in a couple of different areas, and ultimately we'll make up that line as we go along. I mean, let's face it, if you did it different to what you saw on the photo, nobody would be any the wiser. What other weird shapes have we got? So for me, when I do my drawings, I always make sure I put in any lines that reflect any sort of vein work or any direction that the petals go. So that's really important, because otherwise you spend an age later on trying to work out. This is quite simple, but if you're trying to work out later on some particularly curly flower or petal, you'd be staring at it for ages trying to work out how exactly that went, how exactly the curve goes, especially if it has a ripple or something. So this is quite simple. So that's those sort of lines. They just give me a few directional avenues. See this one here, this one going up on a curve, this one's going the other way on a curve. I mean, I know I'm exaggerating a little bit, but so those lines are already indicating that when I'm going to be painting any sort of lines, I'm going to start curving that way, going into centre, and then start curving back over to the other side. So there's that. Hi Tanya, we've just started. I'm just having a little explanation, and possibly because if you've drawn from my drawing, there might be some lines that you're wondering what they are. So these are the lines of the curve of the petal, and I've got a video going, so you'll be able to catch up on that. in the video. And other lines that I've drawn, oh, these are tide mark, you know, there's shadows, right? So that's my shadow line there. But when I'm looking at the flower photo, I sort of see that there's lighter, if you really squint your eyes and imagine things, a little bit darker and darker still. So I've sort of done a little triangle there to remind myself that that goes into darker, but then it gets darker again as I hit that line and come down. So that's what that means. This part here was where I maybe saw where the petal was slightly lighter, and gosh, sometimes because this petal doesn't have, for me it doesn't have much detail, so I will look at any detail I can see whatsoever, and it's a tiny bit different here. I can see a tiny bit of paleness at the edge and a tiny bit of paler pink here, but not much different from its surroundings. But I still put that in there because I want to make sure that I try and add as much sort of detail as possible in this. Otherwise, you know, you'll end up with a flat flower. So sometimes it's not so much imagination as exaggeration of anything you see, if there's not much going on. So that's sort of a brief explanation as to why I might have a few of the weird. There's a bit of sort of highlight and a line for the direction in there. Yeah, so that's the weirdness. That is my soft gradient between the pink, between the white and the pink. That's what that line means for me. Just the difference in colours indicated there. There was another picture that I gave somebody once, and it was much more cryptic, and that's why she asked. So I've gone through it with you. Now, so when I'm going to paint, just quickly, I mean, I leave in my pencil marks reasonably. I don't, as I say, that's what we were talking about really for this line here. Because it's going into white, and obviously very light, I'm going to take that out a little bit more, for instance. But there are it's going to shake the camera quite a bit. There are actual other places where I can leave it. Where's my other eraser? Where I would leave it, for instance, up and around here where it's darker, I can leave those lines a lot more. But in the lighter parts, when I come to them, I might take them out a little bit, so that we're not left with trying to erase them later. So this, all down the bottom here is just that white, so we can sort of just go over that a little. Alright, hang on a sec, Okay. So, I would start, let's see, I think I'll start with just magenta over everything. Might be the, I don't think I need that at the moment. I do cover my work more than you'll see me do normally. I mean, I don't cover it in that tiny, I've seen people and they literally cover the whole thing and cut out this tiny part. I don't do that much, but I would sort of cover the rest of the white paper more if I was painting without video and showing people what I'm doing. Let me show you. So, I mean, obviously this is just a very light first wash, so we don't need a strong colour. I would say that this is a chance for you to really practice your soft edges, because this colour is quite, it dries darker than when you first put it on, and it is quite, it dries quite sharply. You know, any sort of line or soft edge that you think you have actually dries a lot more crisp than you think. So because of that, we'll definitely start with just a really light wash. So something like that will do. And then I just have a little look and block in some colour. I am quite used to painting photographs, and I take a lot of photographs. How many? I think I sent you maybe only 20, which isn't necessarily that much for me of a flower, but I edited some of them out for you just to be the most appropriate ones, and also it is quite simple, so there's not a lot of detail, so I haven't had to take a lot of photos. I mean, this part obviously is quite easy, so you can pop in some colour. There we go, that's just a water brush that I'm using, and whilst I haven't wet my background paper, I could have, actually, in this instance. I don't normally do that. Maybe I'll just run some water down the edges, just so that when I get there, they're a little bit softer. And this is really just basic stuff. Stop me if you see, I'm not exactly sure what everybody's level is, so please feel free to ask anything, or stop me and ask me what I'm doing if I haven't sort of explained something clearly, or explain something at all. I might forget to talk every now and again about what it is I'm doing or why I'm doing it, so you want to definitely ask. Actually, what I would have done is taken out that pencil line a bit more, so I'll let that dry, and we can do that as well. So I'm going to say something, but I've forgotten, so we'll move on. Where's my other photo? So I just want to take out that line, that is our pencil line, into the pale part, and there we go. So I always paint with a water brush ready, and I can use that quite a bit to blend my work as well. Right, I just want to do that line there. Okay. Now, at this point, putting on the first wash, whilst I generally still would follow the line of the petal and up and down, sort of, especially if I think the wash is going to dry a little bit before I get back to it, say, then that way any lines that dry in my wash this early on are going all in the right direction. I just popped a bit of water just on that edge there. Just drag it all around. Now I might just leave a slightly bigger space there, just to remind myself that I want that to be a slightly lighter colour. And whilst I finished my wash up there, I use the water brush now to just bring it softly to the edge so that it is a nice graduated wash. I'll just run it around there and see if that will dry a little bit softer. I have another brush that I love, and that is the flat brush that I have. This is nothing special, just from the stationery store, and quite often after I've done a session of painting, the next day once everything's dried, I come in and I can soften edges with this. You can even move paint around a little bit, which is quite handy. So I love this brush, and it can remove a lot of things. It's helped me out so much. So that is really like my number 2 brush, I would say. Now, one of these lines, it's a cryptic line here, is that pink stripe. Because I've got sort of so many lines in this part, I didn't really indicate which one was the darker one, and it really doesn't matter. Just one line will do. This one would just pop a little bit of water, well that's quite a bit, but on that edge there, I can run this all in here. There is a line that you'll see, a little double line down here. It was my reminder when I was drawing that it does get quite a little bit lighter at the edge. And because of that, I'm not going to take the paint all the way up there. It will be pink, but not as pink. So I'll just leave that now white, just sort of to have something to work with later on, really. And let's see. Well, I might take that line that seems very hard for me. I have a brush, a nice little fan brush that I use to do all that, but I don't know where it is. And also up here I find this is a little bit lighter as well, and I think because we do lack a lot of anything on this flower, like it doesn't have a whole heap of detail. We'll just leave that there for a moment and not go completely up to the top there. We'll do something with it later, but I just want to I'll maybe think about how much I'm going to put in there. And there's a little edge as well along this area, just at the top there, that I'll leave that as well. About the most messy I get painting this first layer. Otherwise I'm very a lot more controlled. Where else is that going? And that goes all the way down. What does happen is it gets a lot softer in through here, so I might make sure I just soften that. I soften this edge here. I'm sure if I open up another photo it will show me something slightly different, but I'm going to just keep that really soft just in there for now. We can still run the colour through there, but just be a hint of it and not quite as dark. Okay. Let's see. So the last sort of two on the side. Let me just have a look at something, because I'm seeing something on this photo that I'm not seeing on my drawing, and that happens on occasion. I may have missed a line. Yeah, there's just a little curve. You can put in. Here's my pencil. So that. Okay. Now all of this is quite a dark petal, so we can just put it all the way up. Now if I was doing this, if this was a really light flower, and some parts of it are, we're much more careful with how the paint was laid on, because I know it's getting darker. I'm not too worried, but when we get to the lighter part I will. So whilst I've drawn a sort of a curved triangle, I'm going to take my water brush and just soften that edge. I might just bring it up a little bit further. So I want that edge to be, of that curve to be white, to be light, to be at this stage left completely. Now we have just the back petal to do, but it's a little bit out of focus in this shot, and which is the reason, of course, why I always end up with so many photos. It's to make sure I get sort of everything in focus. So I'm just going to open up just one of this petal just to make sure, because there is a little bit of highlights that I think we really need to keep. So I will do that, and also I don't like necessarily that line. It needs to, let's see, we go up a little bit, keep it down. So there's at the very tip of this is quite a nice pale spot, so I'm going to leave that. And it gets paler over this area too.